Welcome everyone to this first breakout session of the celebration event. My name is Patrik Rendel. I'm very happy to see you all here and congratulations again for being certified top employer in your country, on the continent or even on the globe. It's my pleasure to announce to you our speaker. He's the Chief Talent Officer and CHRO Group Functions of PepsiCo, and he's going to share with you some insights about the PepsiCo way and about their journey on their way to a new culture, to a cultural transformation. I'm looking forward to that a lot. So without any further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Sergio. Please, Sergio, take it away.
Thank you, Patrik, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and congratulations for all the certifications and all the great work that you do for the HR function globally. So I thought it was very appropriate to see Mariana at the beginning of the show talking about her reflections on how to build culture in the current world. So we're trying to land that into what we did in PepsiCo for the last 2 years. I'll speak for 6-8 minutes, and hopefully then we can engage a bit into a dialogue. Let me introduce the company a little bit first, and hopefully you would recognize some of these brands. Some of them hopefully will be in your pantries. But what is more important for the purpose of this conversation is the fact that we operate in more than 200 countries. And when we talk about culture, that is a very important element to have in mind. Every single culture evolution or transformation journey normally would start with a trigger point. Something happens that starts the process. In our particular case, in the year 2018, we saw the transition between Indra Nooyi, CEO for 13 years at PepsiCo, and Ramon Laguarta becoming the new head of the organization. Quickly, Ramon thought it was a good idea to assemble a group of people, around 35 leaders across the organization, to try to rethink the type of company we wanted to be. Very quickly, we got to, we want to become faster. And for us, that meant growing ahead of our industry. Also, we wanted to be stronger. And that meant to be very, very intentional in which capabilities we're going to build at a scale to justify and explain our success, maybe at the rest of other things that we will not do. And last but not least, we wanted to be better. And purpose will continue to be front and center to everything that we do in the company, but maybe with a more of an intentional spin. As we were having these conversations with the senior leaders, it was fascinating to see how the chatter moved from business language to something that resembled more of behaviors. And you would listen to conversations around becoming more consumer-centric, or being leaner and more efficient, or embracing transparent and honest debate. So we very quickly realized this is a culture conversation as much as is a business conversation. So we shift the work to start with that foundational discussion around how we would codify the culture that we want to build for PepsiCo moving forward. Now, culture in PepsiCo was already a critical element. As we were talking to our employees and engaging in dialogues with them on a yearly basis, our employees would say culture is the one reason why I stay in PepsiCo. They also would say, keep on working on it. We want to make it even better, right? But funnily enough, as we were trying to look at, well, the culture work was, how it was done in many countries around the world, it was fascinating to see how many different variations and versions of our culture exist, even the names that people were using. And that was despite having one unique single set of values and guiding principles. Still, people felt that they need to create something different for their business units. So the first job in that context was really to get to one single list that we all would embrace. And in this page, you can see the process that we follow in a 6 to 8 weeks sprint. So we started to okay, take a stock of everything that we have, every single behavior I think the people talk about in terms of our culture, how those look like, have them in a list and give them to people, these 35 leaders that we had working on the strategy of the company. And we asked them to pick the 3 they would keep and the 3 that they would drop. Again, with the idea that culture should be intentional. It's important to also determine what you're not going to be famous for. So with that, we got to a first, I guess, good short list of behaviors and cultural tenets to work with. The second step was one where we did 2 things. On the one hand, we looked externally. And why was that? You all know that when you define culture, there are 3 elements that you need to bear in mind. Your culture should be credible. Your culture should be aspirational. But hopefully your culture is differentiating. Right? Hopefully it has a bit of a different spin that is very particular to you and it doesn't resemble to other organizations. So we took a look at how other companies were defining their culture in different industries, different sizes, more established, more new. And at the same time, we talked to our employees. We took a sample of 5,000 people across the world and we asked them to do a bit the same exercise. Rank all these for us. Let us know where you believe we should be credible, aspirational, and differentiating. So with that, we got now with a list that we felt reasonably good about, but we wanted to take a step further. And we started to think of our employees as consumers to the point that we engaged with Kantar, which is a consumer research shop, and our insights team. And they conducted a number of interviews with real employees in many, many different countries to make sure that we were going to capture the essence of PepsiCo in many different cultural realities. And after doing that and a bunch of workshops, now more with the final list and description of our culture, we arrived to what we call the PepsiCo way. So now some people would say, okay, you're done, right? You have your list of values or cultural tenets. They are shown in the one page that every CEO would have with their vision, the mission, the strategic pillar. And frankly speaking, many organizations will stop here. That's it. I have a fancy page. I have something that I would put on the wall. But I know you know better than this. And I know we are thinking of, okay, how we now move this into real life, how we make sure that culture becomes something that we use every day. So we approach implementation with 3 building blocks in mind. And I'm not going to take them in order, but let me start with communication and capability. Communication is super important in year 1, simply because you want people to hear and use your cultural tenets in their language. So every single CEO note, every single quarterly result, every single piece of information that was coming out to our population had something about the PepsiCo way. And it's this idea of you build trust through repetition of messages. So that was very, very important. What we call early momentum builders was also equally important because you want to reach many quick and build excitement, right? So we did a couple of things. So for example, we launched a global crowdsourcing campaign called Have a Say, where we're asking people to act as owners. If this would be your company, if this would be your culture, what would you do to bring it to life? Another fun feature of that initiative was to ask them to let us know which process they would eliminate at all because they would hate it, right? And we built that into our plans. We also did something very similar to become more consumer-centric by launching a global initiative called The Next Big Idea, where groups of people across the world would partner to give us innovation ideas that then, for the finalists and winners, we will bring to life and the actual market. But the one I feel more proud about is the one in the middle, the people management system hack. Because at the end of the day, someone said, you build culture in how you hire, who you promote, and who you exit in an organization. So every single touch point in your HR ecosystem should go back to the PepsiCo way, to how would you define your culture. And in our case, we took a 1 year, actually, period of time to make sure that everything from our employee brand to our selection practice, to our assessment practice, our development programs, our recognition and performance management, everything was designed with the PepsiCo way in mind. Again, The PepsiCo way is now part of the language that we all use as we go through all very important touch points. But most importantly, it's part of how we make decisions along the way. So with that, in a year time, we moved from having very heated discussions about how to call those attributes and those behaviors to painting the organization with the PepsiCo way. But listen, I think it's fair to say that we experienced bumps in the process. So early tension points, letting go of existing models is always difficult. And this is a bit like best practices. Everyone is happy with best practices as long as they are theirs, right? So it took quite a bit of convincing to have people forget about the behaviors and the culture and then the programs that they had prior to this. Second is alignment on the vital few, because there are many research about get it to a list that you can manage, that you can remember, that everyone can recite. But as you go through the process, the tendency is a bit the opposite. You want to throw more and more, so more people are happy. And we learn very quickly that the point of diminishing returns come very quickly, right? Then there's this idea of global and local deployment approach. And this is a fascinating debate because we need to reconcile two realities. On the one hand, we want to provide every single PepsiCo employee the same baseline experience across the world. But at the same time, culture is like food. It's very local in nature. So you need to be very balanced in how you think of deploying the culture of any particular organization, PepsiCo in this particular case. Lesson learned, democracy helps in these processes, but there is a point in time when someone needs to decide. And normally that is the CEO, that is the leadership team, but you need to be very good at determining when enough is enough. We have discussed this, we move on. And a bit of the next frontier is thinking not only how you wire all your HR ecosystem to drive culture, but how you wire your whole enterprise. So think of be consumer-centric in our case, and what does that mean for how we look at our innovation process, how we look at marketing, insights, and design, and the way we work, or focusing on getting things done fast. What does that mean for how we are organized and our operating model, the different role of the different layers, global, sector, market unit? So that's the frontier we are getting at now. So hopefully in a short period of time, we not only have a full HR system that is geared to reinforce the PepsiCo way, but how we operate as a business does the same. Thank you very much, everyone. Patrik, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Sergio. Very inspiring. You had me there a couple of times. I was thinking, yeah, but how do you combine this local and global? Are you managing the mismatch? And you already responded to that within the presentation. So very nice and very thankful to be so open about it and sharing your learnings on that front as well. Let's look in the chat. There are some questions coming in. I quickly have seen one from Chantal from the Netherlands. She's asking how much of your company culture is actually created and how much is inherited, maybe referring to that through that process you just mentioned.
That is an excellent question, because the one thing that is really important is look at these things normally as an evolution, right? Like a revolution. I mean, unless something is burning in your business and you want to really take the business in a very different direction, we are talking about a place where you honor the past, you recognize the company that you are, which, by the way, speaks to the element of credibility. Now you need to say something that people would recognize when they enter your facilities, and that is built over time. While at the same time, you need to add something that is a bit related to the company that you are now building moving forward, which at times is very particular to the CEO that you have in place and the market conditions and the growth aspirations for the enterprise. So it's a bit like the global-local balance. There's a bit also of a balance of honoring the past, acknowledging this is the company that I am, I have been building in our case for more than 80 years, to then take it to a bit of a different spin in line with the strategy that you are setting for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, can imagine. Also relating to how long are people with the company? What culture are they used to? Where do they come from? Which country are they in? Yeah, can imagine. Let's go to the next one from Carlos. How did you handle and respond to resistance regarding this new set of values, I guess?
Thank you, Carlos. I think in our case, we had through that 8-10 weeks sprint, the first 3-4 weeks were ones where we really have fun, fun in the way that we had heated debates. Because as I said, everyone wants to have one set of behaviors or one set of cultural tenets as long as they are theirs, right? So we thought it was important not to kill that debate soon, right? And we listened to people. We really try to understand, okay, why that is, why you think that is a better codification than others that we are discussing. But there was a point in time where, again, as I said, it was evident that we're hitting the point of diminishing returns. At that point, I think the CEO plays a role, right? Because at least in our case, the culture of the company is one of the things that the CEO thinks as his legacy. So he is the one who needs to, almost, make a statement around, okay, we have discussed this, we have heard all voices, this is where we are going to go. To then reopen again in terms of how you take that something into a real plan. But again, suffice to say that there were moments of tension. But once we agreed on something, and that's probably also a cultural attribute of PepsiCo, once we agreed on something after much debate, everyone runs with it. The debate is not reopened.
So it's not going to be discussion forever. That's good to know. One other question coming in from a person you apparently know, or you at least have seen each other at PepsiCo, Ramon Sanchez Peyon. Mm-hmm. How do you think how do you think is the best and easy way to join the company's purpose across the generation gaps into the companies?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question well, Ramon, but listen, the generational element in every single HR practice is being debated at length, and there's a lot of research out there. In our particular case, it's a fascinating thing. Every time we cut every single data set by generation, we don't see differences. We don't see massive differences. So when we were doing research prior to arriving to the 7 behaviors that we have now, or even post-launch, every time we do research in the company, we do not see differences in terms of strengths, opportunities, adoption, recognition of these cultural tenets across, again, different generations. There are more variations actually linked to geography that link to the generational aspect of it. It might be that we just hire the same profile of people, and that is why the generational element again doesn't show up that much.
All right, thanks a lot. And I see there are a lot of questions coming in. We have the next one from Ana Marcia Lopez. Mm-hmm. Did you make lots of changes on senior leadership? Did you hire new leaders to drive the change?
That's a good question, Ana. I think we can do this in Spanish, by the way. Now we have Ana, Ramon, we have a good number of colleagues from Spain or other Latin American countries. So yes and no. I have one colleague that always says your culture starts to stick the moment you start exiting the competent assholes. No. Which is a bit of maybe a very descriptive idea linked to the question. In our case, we didn't have to exit too many people. Again, if you go with the concept of you honor the past and you evolve your culture into something that connects with the strategy of the company, most of the folks in senior positions, they already more or less behave along the same guardrails. There are exceptions to that, a handful of them where we need to take a bit of a tougher stand. But it was not a large number of people, fortunately.
All right. Thanks for answering. We have another one, Rihanna Rombo. I think a very interesting one. How can you convince management that shaping culture is an important thing to do? I think especially something HR community would like to take with them back into the business when they want to push that topic.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Rihanna. I think we were lucky in two ways. When the CEO makes it a priority, your life is way easier. right? And Ramon, in our case, was the first one pushing for this initiative. He was at the forefront of it. He was the voice of it, the face of it. So that really helped. Secondly, for many years, I think we've built a good reputation in the function. So HR at PepsiCo is a powerful and a strong function. We have the credibility to come to the table and say this is important for these reasons, and this is what we are going to do, right? But also, I would say the senior leadership of the company was very open to it. When we're going through where we see the people-related opportunities in the company, again, linked to the new strategy and all that, and we all were going with the usual analysis around how we attract people, how we manage them through the life cycle, how we build capabilities at the scale. People were going back again and again to culture, right? Which I think is the right way to start, right? Because everything actually emanates them from that position. So I don't have a good answer in terms of what to do differently, but those are the things that made our life a bit easier at PepsiCo.
Thanks. And we have many more coming in. This one is from Maria Camilla Vega. If you had to choose one factor of success for the deployment of the PepsiCo way from the change management perspective, what would it be and why?
That's really a good one. Because I think it works well when it goes together, right? The early momentum builders, the drum beats of communication, and then hacking the entire people system is a very powerful. It's a very powerful communication. Listen, probably I would pick the. I'm not gonna take on the HR piece because obviously I'm proud of that. But I think how we use the business communication strategy to connect with the PepsiCo way was very relevant because with that you create this idea of this is not another people initiative. This is not an HR thing. This is something that is bigger than HR, that is bigger than the people agenda. It is how we manage the business. So to the extent that, again, in every single communication from the CEO, quarterly results, all those business communications, we were able to hack some of that to talk about the PepsiCo way. We created this idea of it's not two things separate. It's the one thing. This is how we run the business. And I think that in the minds of people was very powerful.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. We have another one from Shane. How did PepsiCo measure performance of this initiative investment? Of course, everyone's looking for ways to measure the success.
Yeah. Well, measuring culture is, if I knew, I would be writing a book and making money out of this, right? So it's a complicated thing. At the end of the day, the performance of your organization is a function of multiple factors. In our case, we've been performing ahead of the industry for the last 2 years. Now, is that because of the PepsiCo way? It is not. It's many things. In our case, I think what is more important is how we measure, how we hold people accountable in the organization about the PepsiCo way. And that's where we have a few measures in place. So every single manager, twice per year, is going to be rated against the PepsiCo way in two different manners. My whole team, through the organizational health survey that happens every year, will give me a score about how they lived and perceived the PepsiCo way on a given year. But then also my diary reports every year would do the same, just my diary reports, right? And I would have that as a result of how, as a leader, I embody and I create an environment where the PepsiCo way is lived. So that's one element of it. Our performance management process also has the same, right? So we have the usual objectives that we align against our strategic building blocks: faster, stronger, and better. That leads to a rating, 1 to 5. But then we have the PepsiCo way. The PepsiCo way doesn't give you a rating or anything, but it gives you the license to take your rating up or down. And it's this idea that how you deliver results matters, right? If you are a 5, but you happen to be an asshole, or you happen to be someone that goes against everything that we believe in, we can take your rating down to 4, to 3, to 2. It can be also the other way around. We have people that maybe deserve a 3 or a 4 if you look purely at the output, but how they have done it and how they have exemplified the PepsiCo way grants them a greater rating, to a 4 or a 5, right? So we have those mechanisms being built where we make sure that we connect the PepsiCo way to how we evaluate performance across the enterprise.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good way to still have it somewhere measurable and still have it placed not just as a cultural framework, but really in the everyday life. So one final one, looking at the time from Sarah McKinley. Did you utilize local culture change ambassadors, also tapping into the mismatch potentially between local and the global way to adapt the global to the local in addition to the central communications?
Okay. And of course, yes. Yeah, I mean, and what we did is when I was talking to my team, is like my point was don't get overly excited. Let's not try to create everything for the world. No, so at the center we codify the framework, and we do 1 or 2 global initiatives to set the tone. And then what we need to build is this network of local ambassadors that are going to take and make these theirs, because again, food and culture are local in nature also, right? So you need to make sure you understand those local realities. So pretty much as you imply in the question, we built that network of folks in key geographies where we're having this dialogue of what do you need that I can give you from the center, but also keep me posted on what you are doing, because the other thing that we learned is the amazing number of best practices that we codified happening in countries and then offering to the rest of the organization. Right, so we got very quickly into a virtuous cycle by establishing this network that you were suggesting in your question.
Thanks. I think great final words to see how this new PepsiCo way, starting on strategic level, was driven down to the employees into every country and all geographies. Thanks, Sergio, for sharing. Thanks for answering all of those questions. I think it was very interesting to have you here. Thanks everyone in the room to join this session. Congratulations again, and have a good rest of the celebration event and the celebration season, of course. Thanks, Sergio.
Super. Thank you, Patrik.